This is 2020's All the Bright Places. Warning, spoilers ahead. We open up to Finch as he goes for a jog down the road, and he's listening to some music as he runs. Once he reaches the overpass, he notices Violet standing on the edge, and he walks over to her. He asks her what she's doing, and he almost frightens her enough to fall over. He immediately recognizes her, and she asks him to leave. He doesn't think that's a very good idea, and he jumps up on the edge with her. He tries to pull her focus over to him as he does a trick, but she's not amused at all. Eventually, he simply reaches his hand out to her and motions to the ground behind them. Well, that's one way to grab your attention at the start. I wonder if the rest of the movie will keep you hooked like that. Next, we see Violet make her way through the halls of her high school, and it's clear that she is definitely having a hard time fitting in. Once she gets to her locker, Amanda comes over to see if she wants to come to her party this weekend. But Violet is caught up when she sees Finch walk by. Finch, on the other hand, goes to the guidance counselor to talk, but he definitely makes the conversation much more difficult than it needs to be. According to Embry, Finch is on probation, and he's possibly not going to graduate with the rest of the class. Finch tries to make an excuse, but he forgot that he's already used the same excuse 5 times over the past 3 years. Embry tells him that he has to take these meetings seriously, but Finch is not too keen on participating. At lunch, Violet and Amanda catch up some more as Finch watches Violet from his own table. So, I think it's safe to say that Finch is a little bit of a creeper, but not the quiet stalking kind. The very socially awkward one that doesn't care if you catch him staring. Finch tries to find out more about Violet, and he finds out that her sister just died recently. His friends think that it's weird that he's taking any interest in a girl, and he agrees with them. At home that day, Finch talks to Kate about his meeting with Embry, but she doesn't have much faith in him. Finch is not happy about the interrogation from Kate, and she goes on her way to hang out with her friends. That evening, Violet is having a much different family life with her parents, and after sitting in silence, her father talks to her about how hard the day must have been. Just then, her mother brings out a cake to try and make things a little better, but Violet doesn't think that this is the right time for cake, and she goes to her room. Back at Finch's home, he adds a new post-it note to his long wall and ceiling of post-it notes, and he hops on Google to look up more about Violet. It turns out that her sister died in a car accident at the spot he found Violet earlier, and he decides to go for a run there again. Once there, he finds a sign that was put there as a dedication to Violet's sister. At school the next day, Violet makes a ruckus as she drops off her stuff getting to class late, and to get everyone to stop laughing at her, Finch decides to flip his own desk. Definitely an effective way to throw everybody off, but I don't think it would really pull all the attention off of Violet here. Finch manages to get a smile out of Violet, and he goes up to her after class to see if he can lay on some more charm. She's not amused though, and he goes home to add more post-it notes to his wall. This one is focused on Violet and her smile though. That night, Violet talks to her mother about not wanting to do a partner project in class, but her mother thinks that this is the perfect time for her to get back out there. Violet goes to Amanda's party to try and show that she's getting back out there. Meanwhile, Finch is holding his breath in the bathtub until he can't anymore. This is the real exciting night, not what Violet's doing. At the party, Violet is already ready to leave, and one of her friends is getting really tired of Violet's attitude since her sister died months ago. This definitely makes Violet want to leave, and she makes her way back home. Suddenly, she gets a notification that Finch tagged her in his story, and he actually wrote her a song telling her to call him. Romantic, but posting a song about how she was ready to jump off a ledge is hardly the proper way to get someone's positive attention. Of course, it works here though, and the two of them go for a walk together to talk about Violet and what she used to be like before the accident. After a while, Violet tries to point out that she doesn't really want to end it all, and she asks Finch what he really wants from her. He tells her that he wants to be her partner for their school project, and he thinks that it would do her some good considering her situation. By the end of their conversation, Violet smiles at Finch one more time. The next day, Finch passes her on the road, and she agrees to be his partner for the school project. Her one condition is that she doesn't want to be in a car considering her sister's accident, so Finch agrees to ride bikes with her to find locations in Indiana to write about. Considering her sister's death, I feel like that's completely understandable. I probably wouldn't want to be in a car anymore either. They end up at Indiana's high point, and Violet is anything but impressed. Finch still tries to make it seem a little more grand than it really is though, and Violet ends up finally laughing a little bit. Then she explains that she was at the bridge that night because it would have been her sister's birthday. After finding that out, Finch goes through a series of activities to lighten the mood, and it actually works. That evening, Finch can't stop smiling at dinner, and Kate is surprised to see Finch with his new attitude. After dinner, Finch decides to message Violet, and she actually decides to quote back to him one of his favorite authors. This dude got 2 answers back, and that was enough for him to go to her house to throw pebbles at her window. Do kids still do that? I feel like there's some idiot out there throwing real rocks and breaking windows to get some lover's attention. Violet agrees to come down to him, and they ride their bikes to an abandoned building where they answer what they want to do before they die. Then, they sit down for a moment, and Finch asks to know more about Violet's late sister. It definitely helps Violet to be able to talk about her sister, and her parents can see a bit of difference in her the next morning. Even at school, Amanda thinks that she notices a difference in Violet, but she's really worried about her when she finds out that Violet's doing the project with Finch. Last year, Finch apparently threw a chair at Romer in class, and Amanda says that he's dangerous. Well, from the little bit that I've seen of Romer, I kind of want to throw a chair at him too. Finch finds Violet at her locker, and he can definitely tell that she's completely different with him when they're in private. Romer shows up and messes things up with Finch and Violet, though. Finch heads to Embry's office to do his session, and he admits that he's tired of being called a freak. Embry gives him the address to a support group he should go to, and Finch seems to be considering it. The next day, Violet notices her dad watching someone outside, and she goes outside to find Finch sleeping in her yard. When Violet wakes Finch up, he tells her that he has a new place he wants to take her, but she'll have to get in the car to go there. At first, Violet is apprehensive about the idea, but she eventually agrees after her parents help talk her into it. The place they're going to is 160 miles away, and Finch agreed to drive 30 miles per hour in town and 50 on the interstate. This is going to take forever. Violet definitely lightens up a little when she hears Finch's choice in music, and after a very long drive, Violet opens up about the car accident that killed her sister. She goes through every heartbreaking moment that she can remember from that night, and Finch reaches over to hold her hand. At the end of the long drive, Violet finds that Finch has brought her to a homemade roller coaster, and they're both amazed by how it feels to ride. She was scared of Finch's van, but she's not scared of this thing? I get that it's not a car, but this thing is making noises like it's ready to fall apart at any moment. Finch is happy to see Violet smiling so much, and the ride back home is definitely more relaxed. Violet finds a gift in the side of her door, and it turns out that it's a map to a secret destination that he's going to take her someday. Violet tells him that it's nice to have a friend again, and he stops the car to kiss her. He doesn't just kiss her, though. He stops the van, gets out, walks around, undoes her seatbelt, waits for her to get out, stares at her, then decides to kiss her. It clearly works for her, though, because she keeps doing it. After that day, Violet and Finch go on many different adventures where they enjoy each other's company and take in every moment together. As time goes on, Violet starts noticing Finch zoning out more and more, and eventually he misses school. When she talks to Finch's friends, they tell her that this is just what Finch does, and she shouldn't worry about it. Violet is furious that he's making her go through this, though. Eventually, Finch just shows up at Violet's house talking to her parents, and when she tries to tell them how mad she is, he shows her his van full of flowers for her. Suddenly, everything is all good now, and they go out on another adventure. Flowers don't just make everything better like that. Granted, he took it to the next level, but they aren't the cure-all for disappearing. When Finch takes his shirt off to go swimming, Violet notices a scar on his side, but she decides to ignore it for the time being. After swimming, Violet decides to try and find out more about Finch, and he tells her about how Kate is really all he has for family now. Then she points to his scar, and he decides to jump back in the water to avoid answering. Finch is underwater for a long time, though, and Violet starts to get worried. She jumps in to look for him, and he's surprised to see how scared she was when he comes back to the surface. Violet decides that this is the right time to ask where he goes when he disappears, and Finch explains that he has to leave to feel like he's in control again. Apparently, his father used to do really bad things to him, and he's still struggling with the after effects. It's hard to remember that these two are technically still just kids, and they're dealing with life-changing trauma at a young age. That night, the two of them go to a train car on the tracks. The two of them get intimate in the train car, and they end up spending the night there. In the morning, Violet starts freaking out, and they rush back to her house. Violet's father is very furious, and he tells Finch that it's just best if he goes home for now. Once home, Finch waits anxiously on the edge of his bed, and even though he's getting message notifications, he doesn't acknowledge them, and he rips the post-its off his ceiling in a slight rage. Back at Violet's house, Violet's mother tries to get her to understand why her and her father were worried about her being out all night, but Violet tries to defend Finch as best as possible. Back at Finch's house, he's decided that it's time for a change of scenery in his room, and he seems to have hit a full depression at this point. So what does he do when things are hard? Goes for his run, obviously. Running just makes things worse for me. When Finch gets back home, he decides that he's going to live in his closet from now on. And after he sets himself up in there, he starts writing his post-it notes again. The next day at school, Romer tries to catch up with Violet, but she doesn't want to talk to him. Finch shows up and tries to pull her away, but Romer just won't let it go. Finch goes back to Romer and attacks him, and the only thing that gets him to stop is Violet. Finch goes straight home, and he loses it once he parks the van. Back at school, Finch's friend tries to tell Violet that Finch isn't an easy guy to be close with, but he still loves him, so he sticks around. After school, Violet goes to check on Finch, and she tells Kate all about what happened. Finch is actually at the support group that Embry mentioned to him, and it turns out that Amanda goes here too. Of course, Amanda has just as many of her own issues, so this is where someone starts understanding Finch a little better. Classic scenario. After group, Finch goes to the bar that Kate works at to talk about his bad memories of their father, and back at his house, Violet ventures into Finch's room to figure out more about him. Eventually, Finch comes home to find Violet in his room, and he admits that he scared her earlier. According to Finch, he blanks out sometimes, and he goes into these dark moods. He swears that he can fix things, but he just needs time to focus. Violet tries to tell him that he doesn't have to do this alone, but he just keeps trying to push her away. Eventually, he simply tells her to leave, and Violet does just that. At school the next day, Violet sits alone at lunch, and after school, she visits her special bridge alone. She tries to call Finch to apologize, and she tells him that she really needs him to come back to her. Later, Violet tries to tell her dad about what she was doing at the bridge on her sister's birthday, and she tells him the story of how Finch saved her life that day. He's thankful that Finch was there for her through that, and he tries to help her remember where Finch might have gone to. Determined to find and help Finch, Violet gets in the car, and she takes a deep breath before driving off to find him. Violet eventually finds Finch's van parked by the lake they swam at, and she worries that she's too late to help him. She finds his clothes on the shore, and she calls out for him. Violet gives up hope and goes back to her car. Eventually, the police show up, and in time, a funeral is held. Oh, wow. I really thought that he was going to pop up at the last second. Credit to the movie for not taking the easy way out. Violet goes back to her house to mourn with her parents, but later she goes to check in with Amanda. Amanda decided to tell Violet about her situation, and Violet apologized for not being there for her. Over time, Violet starts her own collection of post-it note quotes, and she eventually looks at the map with Finch's special destination. It turns out to be a church, and as she flips through the guest book, she finds Finch's mark in it. When Violet gave her school presentation, she admits that Finch and their destinations changed her as a person, and she's better for it. Violet is so appreciative of the lessons Finch taught her about life, and she did her best to keep Finch's beliefs alive. Then, the credits roll. This movie definitely didn't take the easy way out with any points in its story, and I can appreciate it for taking a different road. It's still a feel-good motivational movie at heart, and it's definitely worth a watch. Give it a shot. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.